Welcome to Nailed It, a podcast featuring business tips from industry leaders, presented by Clever Punch. Here's your host, Jade Flogerzi.
All right, on today's episode of Nailed It, we're excited to be joined by Jared Godinez. Jared is with Brashears Newendorp Insurance as a dedicated risk management professional, and he has a passion for working with businesses that have a strong mission and make a positive impact on their communities. With a deep understanding of industries like private schools, general contractors, real estate, medical practices, and more, Jared brings a wealth of expertise. He holds several certifications, including construction risk insurance specialist, commercial lines coverage specialist, and is certified with the WCIRB Comp Essentials program. His insights into navigating California's complex workers' compensation system are invaluable to his clients. Jared, welcome to the show. We're so excited to hear about your insights.
Thank you for having me, Jay. This is great. I'm really excited to be here.
So I wanted to chat with you because you're here, you're local, Brashears Newendorp's in Santa Barbara. You specialize in personal, business, aviation, marine, but also construction, which is where we overlap with our industries that we serve. And I understand you recently attended the IRMI conference. And we wanted to hear more about what is that conference? What did you learn? What were your takeaways from it?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a great time. And there's going to be a few acronyms, I guess we'll be throwing around here, designations and alphabet soup. So IRMI is the International Risk Management Institute. And essentially, they've been around for 40 years. And really their goal has been to try to get tools and be helpful to the insurance buyer. That could be the, insurance broker. It could be the business owner and the risk manager. It could be an attorney. So either of those have been, the IRMI has been great for designations. And so the CRIS designation is really what I've been focused on, and that's construction risk insurance specialist. And so they put together a really nice conference, 3 days in San Diego. And they brought together a lot of professionals from all over the world. Could be attorneys, it could be other brokers, it could be underwriters, really talking about the different risks involved with contractors. And outside of California too, most of what I do is in California, but this is really kind of nationally based and helpful because we all are kind of in the same pool together. Even though we have our own special risk here in California, we're all kind of in the same financial pool and sharing the risk with a lot of others too. So really nice, hard to be away from my family, of course. Really difficult to do that, but it was just great to be there with some of my underwriters. A lot of really good networking opportunities just to talk to the people that actually write the insurance, along with asking attorneys questions about subcontractor agreement, indemnification agreements, different clauses, just questions that I have. And so it's difficult because sometimes, there's a lot of information online, but really talking to these professionals and getting to sit down with them was really huge. Some big takeaways though for me has been, and kind of uncomfortably has been seemingly going to be a reliance on AI, right? That was a big topic, right? What are the ways that AI can really help our efficiencies, right? How do we take this big set of data and be able to use it in a way that is really meaningful, and so that can really help guide our decisions for construction moving forward? I tend to be somebody, we were talking earlier about somebody who accepts change, but doesn't necessarily always love the change. So AI has been kind of uncomfortable for me, getting used to ChatGPT, things like that. My college upbringing didn't really lend itself to that kind of let's go out and use ChatGPT in that manner. But I'm starting to re-buy into it and realizing that this really has the chance to do some really good things, I think, in the construction industry. Along with that, a lot of really good talks about, what to look for in a general liability policy, certain exclusions, different language that can be dangerous to a contractor. Things like a subsidence exclusion for a general engineering contractor who prepares land can be really dangerous, right? It pretty much means that if a ground settles and there's a claim to deal with, you didn't prepare the ground correctly, a subsidence exclusion will take coverage away. And so that's really dangerous for somebody. And so really making sure we're understanding what the forms are saying, what the policies are agreeing to do, what they're agreeing not to do is really important. And so those are the tools that I walked away with, and now I get to go and implement them with all of my clients and hopefully some new folks as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so valuable for you to have those insights to be able to share the risks, the tools to help your clients and to be a wealth of information for them just to navigate. I mean, insurance is a tricky industry. It's one of the things that businesses need to have. And, feedback that I've gotten is it's maybe not like the most attractive part of a business to get excited about and get into. But when you are working with the wrong person that's not looking out for you or that is not up to speed, that's when you really run into trouble and realize that, you need to have people that know what is going on, know the changes, and are looking out for your best interests. So
Absolutely,
I'm glad that you came back with information. So how is technology, anything in addition to AI, with how technology is helping with construction risk?
Well, I think it's really has to do with the connectedness of AI and then, the Internet of Things. And that connection, I think, is really what's going to be, if we get those two working together the right way safely, I think there's the opportunity to make some big impact. For instance, one of the things that I came back with is there was a concrete company, and they were having problems with rebar tying. So, the steel beams, they lay across each other, and each rebar cross-section needs to be tied. And it's really dangerous work. I mean, you're walking on rebar, people can get impaled. It's really sharp. It's back-breaking work. And so this concrete company was able to come up with a machine that could tie rebar. And it could do it with sensors. It could do it with imaging. Whereas a human can do maybe 150 rebar ties an hour, this machine can do 1,100 an hour. Doesn't take breaks, can work at night, can be operated by one person. And so I think that kind of thing can be huge because we're not necessarily having a robot take a job that is really desirable. This is a job that's highly hazardous to somebody. We're talking about delays. And so when we're talking about that, it's like those are the types of things that I think AI can really help with, right? For me, of course, the Roomba or the AI vacuum is huge. At first I was like, I don't think this is going to be great for us, but I really enjoy it. I don't, I like vacuuming, but I don't like getting under the bed and getting all the dust bunnies and everything like that, right? It's like, those are the kind of jobs that can we get a robot to do that and will make us more efficient. So
do they know yet how something like that would affect an insurance policy?
In terms of the laying down the rebar?
No, in terms of having that replace a person, like then does it become the insurance issue is the cost of the technology?
Well, the insurance company, it would come down to the claims is, did something happen when they tied the rebar, right? On the liability side, did the machine not tie it correctly?
Okay.
It's one of those things where I don't think it's big enough for there to be a big problem because it didn't tie it correctly. It's not that technical of a process. It's just really kind of a laborious and kind of dangerous process. Really on the insurance side, where I think you get the best savings is on the workers' compensation side, because when you have employees going out there having back injuries, they could be out of work for 2 months. They're getting wages. They have medical bills. And on top of that, they're not getting any work out of them. Right. And so this is where I think the insurance costs can really be shrunk down to eliminate some of those more hazardous jobs. On the liability side, that would be interesting because we're going to have this big shift. I mean, insurance is always kind of following what the industry and this innovation is always doing. And that's not an easy thing to do when insurance wants to kind of put things in a box based on actuarial data. And then all of a sudden we have kind of this groundbreaking technology that's outside of the box. So It's something that'll have to be addressed as we go, but I don't see there being a huge liability issue because the machine it's not huge. It's not hard to set up. To me, they've been pretty thoughtful about how they have it situated, at least.
What are some of the top risks for construction companies right now?
Well, right now, I think the number one complaint from my contractors is labor. I think there's a real risk there that there's just not enough good quality tradespeople right now. I think that has to do with kind of like a newer generation's expectation of how a work life is going to go. They'd rather go towards maybe more of a clerical office type job than a job where you have to be outside and you have little flexibility. Maybe in, your vacation time, you need to be on the job at 7 and leave at 5. It's can be pretty rigorous and physical. So I think there's going to be an issue where we really need to think about how do we attract a newer generation back to this industry, because the indications point towards a strong construction market right now in 25 and maybe moving forward. It's just, we're going to need, updates to things as things age, and we're going to need newer places to live. So it's just one of the things, we're going to need more of it, but do we have enough people to fill those roles? And that's where, back to AI again, can we kind of, shore some of that up with AI? Some of it, not all of it. Some other interesting bits of technology would be on the virtual reality side is, all right, well, one of the issues with bringing new people on is that, are they trained enough? Do they have the skills? And it takes time to train people. And it's looking like virtual reality might be able to fill the void for some of that, right? Somebody put on the goggles. I haven't done it myself. I'd like to, but to be able to go out and work a piece of machinery with, actually doing the muscle memory of everything while you're actually looking at it. VR can also help, I think, in the pre-planning stages too, as you're collaborating with the owner and architects and engineers and the builder. People can put on their virtual reality sets and kind of walk through things together. And that can eliminate some things down the line. It's like, oh, I didn't know it was going to look like that. It's like, there's a lot of those things that can be spotted early on. Yeah. So, I mean, some stuff that, again, I feel like just a few years ago, that kind of technology was really, really strange to me. In fact, like, we were in Yosemite for the first time a few years ago, and I was so stoked to be there. We're at the valley floor. I see Half Dome, and I look out to a camper, and there's a guy by himself. He's got his camper set up, and he's in the middle of the field with virtual reality goggles on. And I almost got out of the car and be like, what are you doing? I'm like, you're in Yosemite. Why do you want to be somewhere else? But he was probably working on the next application for construction training or something like that. But again, this is technology that is kind of new and uncomfortable. I think, at least for me, it is a little bit. But I'm accepting that this is going to be pretty commonplace, and I could choose to either say I'm not going to participate, or be like, no, I'm going to get familiar with this, right? I'm going to try some things out. Yeah.
Things are changing really quickly. I mentioned in your intro some certifications, CRIS, CLCS. What are those? How do they better support your clients? How do they help your clients have things?
Yeah. So the CRIS is the IRMI. So construction risk insurance specialist. And then the CLCS is a commercial lines coverage specialist. And I got the CLCS when I was first starting out. It was really the foundation of understanding general liability, property, auto, work comp, just kind of the basic policies. And that was really my kind of first go at it before I was even licensed. I went away for 2 weeks, an intensive boot camp style training, and really, really helpful. And I was really motivated making a career transition. I had a family. I really wanted to make it work. So I was front row and center, really trying to be that A student, and really helpful. It was done through the Hartford. So that's really helped, just going to give me a good baseline. I felt like when I started out, even though I didn't have a ton of experience in insurance, I felt like I understood the backside of insurance, which is what most people don't understand. So really helpful there. And then as I got more into construction, I was getting some clients, and then I'd find myself in these situations where I'd be on a call with the project owner, the general contractor, and then 2 attorneys. And they'd have all these questions about how the general liability, what this form said. And I would eventually find out I'm a very resourceful person, but it became very clear to me I needed to level up. I really needed to level up. I needed to know a lot more about how the construction liability chain worked. And that's really where the CRIS came in. Talks a lot about that construction liability, how to save money on commercial auto, different things like that I think are really helpful. Again, in the purchasing of insurance for contractors, it gets to be pretty complicated at times. And so understanding how each policy works, how it's going to interact with each other, and what things are included, what things are excluded. It's important to know what you're going to be doing, Does insurance going to cover me here or not? And it's important to have those conversations, hopefully with your broker or risk manager.
Yeah. If a client is looking to add an insurance or workers' comp policy for the first time, or maybe change their provider, how long is that? What does that process look like? How long should they kind of anticipate that meeting to look like, or multiple meetings to look like, to be able to really understand what they're, really understand the ins and outs and dedicate as much time as they need to, because it is super important.
Well, in the state of California, it's mandatory, right? If you have an employee, you must have workers' compensation. So already, if you have a business, you have an employee, you need to participate in work comp, and understanding the pitfalls of it is an important piece. So work comp is really, the premiums developed by your total payroll times your classification rate. So, a construction company can have a few different people. You could have clerical people, and then you could have carpentry people, and those people have different rates. Somebody who's out there swinging a hammer has a bigger chance of hurting themselves than somebody who might be tapping on a keyboard. So making sure that you understand, are my employees classified correctly? Was this person a clerical person? Are they a salesperson? Or are they out in the field actually doing trade work? So it's important to understand that. It's also important to have those conversations up front about what everybody's doing, because these policies are estimations at the beginning, right? We're making forecasts. We're going to be doing this much payroll, and that's how we get the rate. But at the very end, the work comp policy has an audit. Right. So an auditor will come in and they're going to want a payroll journal. They're going to want some quarterly 941s to kind of, as a second side, see what did you actually do in payroll. And if you've miscalculated, there's going to be a correction. And so I see that with contractors in particular, because there's some variances. All of a sudden we're estimating this and we had a much bigger year than we thought. And all of a sudden we owe $15,000 more to work comp that we didn't know about. So there's things you can do midterm. You work with your broker to say, oh my gosh, we're planning this, but we just got our dream job. It's going to be this much more payroll. Let's try to make a correction so we don't have this huge cash flow issue at the end. So again, making sure the classifications are right, making sure that you're forecasting appropriately. And then, I look at work comp a little bit like, like a credit score where, it is a good idea to take a look at the market. Right. Especially right now, property, auto markets are in a hard market, meaning it's a little more difficult to get the insurance. Workers' compensation is still in a soft market. So this is not a bad time to go out and take a look. You need to come, if you have any former work comp history, you're going to want loss runs to make sure that an underwriter can see, have we had any claims? What are those claims? How much was paid out? And then you want to go through an application, a really good application with your agent, just to make sure that all your safety and all your measures you take to keep people safe are all accounted for on an application, because there are credits given, making sure that people are taken care of, you're providing the right PPE, the, protection for employees to stay safe. So, yeah, but it's one of those things where you really need to keep an eye on the work comp and the safety. Claims can really get out of control quick. They expect you to have a claim at some point. If you have run a business long enough, you probably, even if you're more clerical based, you're probably going to have a claim at some point. But whether or not you have multiple claims is really the key issue, right? Are we seeing somebody fall 3 times in a year, or is it just really once in, every 5 years? And so they really are taking a look at trends, and they're really saying, is this somebody who is really keeping an eye and keeping people safe? Or do we see a person with a back injury here and a slip and fall here and another careless accident there? To an insurance carrier, that signals there's probably going to be a bigger claim coming, and we may not want to stay on this risk, right? So keeping an eye on that is important.
Do you have suggestions if somebody's looking for the right insurance partner, what they should be thinking of, what questions they should be asking, what they should be looking for to find the right fit?
It really depends. I mean, each risk is different. So it's really those conversations up front that matter, For my clients, those early conversations I first have with them are really meaningful to me. I like to find out what's important about the business. Like, why are you even here? Why did you start a business? Is it a family business? Is it because you have a passion for construction? So that kind of helps guide the conversation from that. There's insurance that are mandatory, like work comp. And then there's other insurance that might be more optional. It might be something where it's like, do we want to have insurance for, let's say, cyber liability or employment practice liability? Or do we invest money to make sure that those claims just don't happen? And so those are kind of the conversations that we have is, what's the likelihood of something happening? What's the likelihood of an employee coming after you for claiming discrimination? Or what's the likelihood that you have sensitive information and you've been hacked? And now what? Your systems are compromised. And on top of that, you have 100 people of your clients that are affected. Is that a problem or not? Right? If you go, no, that's not a problem for me. I don't collect people's personal information. Then we go, that may not be a big concern. But they go, oh no, I have tens of thousands of people's social security numbers or things like that. Then we go, you should really have a cyber liability and take those extra measures to make sure you don't get hacked, right? Train your people appropriately. Yeah, those conversations are critical because each risk is different. On the construction side, you could have more of a general contractor who is heavier exposure for general liability. But if we're talking about an architect or engineer, then we're talking about professional liability. And so they're kind of different depending on who it is. If they're more project manager, they have more professional liability. But if they're more general contractor, they have more general liability. So again, it really depends on what it is that you're doing. So it's important to just have those conversations, with whoever you're working with and make sure it's disclosed. I think it's kind of one of those things where it was the idea that you're supposed to give your insurance carrier the least amount of information possible, Not that I think you need to go overkill with it, but also you need to describe what it is you're doing. What are your operations and what are you going to be involved in? And I call that front loading now. I really like to front load things and let's get the right information in front of the underwriter and get them comfortable because they're really not going to the underwriter won't have the chance to meet the insured. They're going to go up and shake their hand and talk to them. They're going to look at an application. They might look at a website and they're going to go after what the agent has been telling them. And so for me, it's really, my marketing background has been helpful for that because I've been able to help describe what the risk is to an underwriter. In terms now that I have all this extra tools and backing from IRMI to be able to describe to an underwriter in common terms about what the risk really is.
What do you think clients like about working with you or with working with Brashears Newendorp? What kind of feedback do you get?
Well, we're known for our synchronized approach to insurance. It's been a little bit more difficult in today's marketplace. We used to be really big on, tying in the commercial with the personal. As you might be aware, the personal homeowner side of things in California has gotten really, really difficult. So a little more difficult to tie everything up the way we used to, but we still do our best to be pragmatic about the insurance and try to make it fit. We're trying to get the right insurance, but we want it to all kind of dovetail together and make sense. We don't want redundancies and we don't want you paying more money than you have to. We're trying to keep people lean and mean and operating. We'd like to think that we're raising all of the boats, so to speak. We want to see people raise their revenues. We want to see people have the ability to go out and hire more people. If we can do that, then, that raises our revenues too. And so that's kind of been my approach to things. I come from a coaching background. I played volleyball for a long time. I coached a long time. And so I think that people enjoy working with me in that way. I look at it as an advisor coach role. I'm doing my best to take something that can be kind of nebulous and kind of far away and try to make it in more simpler terms and get people to understand really what the insurance is about, why it's important, and figuring out what's important to them and how the insurance plays into that.
Nice. Well, thanks so much for sharing everything that you did today. It's nice hearing from your perspective how much the industry is changing, what you can do to help your clients, and particularly the insights that you have into the construction industry. So thanks so much for the conversation.
Thanks for having me, Jade.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Nailed It, business tips from industry leaders, brought to you by Clever Punch. Nailed It is all about connecting with people, building relationships, and helping each other. If you're interested in connecting with any of the guests on our episodes, you can find their contact info in our show notes or on the podcast page at cleverpunchco.com. You can also email info@cleverpunchco.com with any questions or feedback. I'm your host, Jade Flogerzi. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.